Vance versus Ben Gvir has become the latest flashpoint in a widening U.S.-Israel rift over the Iran deal, with their public clash symbolizing how deeply the new peace framework has divided political leaders on both sides. Vice President J.D. Vance's comment that you can't kill your way out of the Iran problem ignited a political firestorm, as critics in Israel and some U.S. hawks accused him of undercutting deterrence and misunderstanding the nature of Tehran's threat. In response, Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir fired back that Iran should be fought like the Nazis, using deliberately provocative language to demand a far more hardline approach and to portray Vance's stance as dangerously naive. All this is unfolding while the United States begins pulling back aircraft from Ben Gurion and other Israeli bases, with Washington quietly starting to take jets home as part of a broader recalibration of its military posture after the Iran war. Amid questions about what the president knew and when, reports say the U.S. plans to move roughly 20% of its jets out of Israel, a significant drawdown that coincides with the sharp political clash and signals a cooler, more conditional security embrace. What began as a debate over the Iran Memorandum of Understanding is now exposing unusually public tensions between the United States and Israel, with the dispute spilling into open political rhetoric rather than remaining behind closed diplomatic doors. Vice President J.D. Vance's comments about Israel touched off a sharp rebuttal from one of the country's most outspoken ministers, turning a policy disagreement into a highly personal and very visible clash. Vance said that Israel cannot just kill its way out of its security problems, a blunt formulation that challenged the logic of purely military solutions and implicitly criticized advocates of an uncompromising hard power approach. He specifically named Itamar Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich as prominent critics of the U.S.-Iran memorandum, singling out two of Israel's most hardline figures as emblematic of resistance to the emerging peace framework. The escalating war of words was detailed in a June 18 report by the Times of Israel, which described how the argument had intensified and how it was being framed in both American and Israeli political discourse. In a rare direct appeal, Ben Gvir turned to X and wrote in English, addressing U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance by name in an attempt to speak over traditional diplomatic channels and rally public opinion. Ben Gvir wrote, "This is the proposal, to deal with the Nazis of the 21st century, invoking a stark historical analogy to argue for a much more aggressive approach toward Iran and its proxies." His remarks deliberately evoked Second World War comparisons, dramatically escalating the rhetoric and underscoring just how charged and emotional the dispute over the Iran deal has become. Vance, for his part, pressed Israel to spell out exactly what its proposal would be to ensure long-term security, effectively challenging hardliners to move beyond slogans and articulate a realistic alternative strategy. The exchange has highlighted a widening gap between the United States' more pragmatic, diplomacy plus deterrence posture and Israel's hardline view that only relentless pressure and force can guarantee safety. All of this debate is unfolding as regional actors and Washington move into the 60-day negotiation window created by the memorandum, a period in which words on both sides could shape or strain the prospects for a final agreement. Notably, amid this war of words and shifting diplomacy, the United States is reportedly beginning to scale back part of its military presence in Israel, signaling a subtle but significant adjustment in how closely U.S. forces are embedded on the ground. Washington is set to relocate roughly 20% of its refueling and cargo aircraft currently stationed at Israel's Ben Gurion airport, a move that reduces the visible U.S. footprint while still leaving substantial capability in place. This redeployment comes just as the U.S.-backed deal to end the Iran war appears to be taking shape, suggesting that American planners are recalibrating posture in anticipation of a new phase in regional security dynamics. Around 72 U.S. military aircraft are presently deployed at Israel's main international airport, forming a sizable logistical and support hub that has underpinned recent operations. Israel's Channel 12 has reported that nearly one-fifth of this U.S. aircraft fleet will be redeployed elsewhere, reinforcing the impression that Washington is easing back from its peak wartime configuration in the country. Is President Trump losing support within the GOP over his deal with Iran? Political operatives and commentators are now watching intently as fissures appear in party unity, with several influential conservative voices questioning whether the agreement aligns with long-standing Republican foreign policy positions. GOP fury erupted after Trump cut a deal with Iran, with critics blasting the administration for negotiating with a regime they view as hostile and for what they say are concessions that could undermine regional security and American credibility. Saddened Republicans described the pact as a major blunder, expressing disappointment that their party leadership would endorse an agreement they argue fails to adequately constrain Tehran's behavior or protect U.S. and allied interests. A senior Republican went so far as to declare that Reagan is rolling over in his grave, invoking the late president as a symbol of conservative foreign policy principles to dramatize how profoundly some within the party believe the deal departs from traditional stances. Trump defended the pact, arguing that it advances U.S. strategic goals and that he remains prepared to revert to the use of force if Tehran violates the terms or if diplomacy fails, a stance meant to reassure critics while keeping military options on the table. As President Trump praises the merits of the Iran deal, many Republicans in Washington are visibly uneasy and on edge, with senior lawmakers and conservative commentators publicly debating whether the agreement betrays core party principles or leaves the United States exposed to future risks. Republicans angrily condemned President Trump's interim deal with Iran as a mistake, arguing that the pact contains concessions that could embolden Tehran and that the administration moved too quickly without securing ironclad guarantees or congressional oversight. The administration hailed the 14-point Memorandum of Understanding as a major win, intended to end the 10-day conflict, presenting the agreement as a diplomatic breakthrough that prioritizes de-escalation and the rapid return of stability to a volatile region. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy said, quote, "Reagan is rolling over in his grave. Iran's nuclear ambitions were not curbed, and they have learned that threatening the Strait of Hormuz works and will undoubtedly leverage it in the future. Now, Iran gets to build brand new infrastructure under this deal. Before the war, the strait was open, Iran was being crushed by sanctions, and 13 service members were still alive. Now, 13 Americans are dead, families have paid billions at the pump, sanctions will be lifted, and the bombing has stopped. This is the worst foreign policy blunder in decades," unquote. Trump administration officials emphasized the downblending of enriched uranium as an important safeguard, claiming that converting higher enriched material into forms less suitable for weapons reduces immediate proliferation risks and serves as a verifiable confidence-building measure. But critics counter that Trump's Iran deal accomplished less than the 2015 nuclear agreement negotiated under President Obama, saying the interim pact lacks the long-term, legally binding restrictions and intrusive verification mechanisms that defined the earlier accord. Another prominent Republican, Senator Ted Cruz, described elements of the pact as ill-advised and urged that further details be disclosed and scrutinized, warning that without greater transparency and stronger enforcement measures the agreement could prove dangerous rather than stabilizing. Republican Senator Ted Cruz said, and I quote, "What has been released so far suggests that, unfortunately, the president is getting, I think, very poor advice when it comes to this deal. History teaches that giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics who want to murder us is a bad idea," unquote.